It is April 7th. It is 7:07 PM, and we are going to call the Bylaw Review Committee to order. And today we are in person. Yay! And Brad will be calling in. I sent him a text, so hopefully he'll call me in a minute. All right, so do we want to start with the minutes?
Yeah.
Do we have anything to add?
Do we want to just call the roll?
No, because we're in
don't
person,
have to.
we're on video, we don't have to.
Oh, awesome.
What I will say though, so the only other person that is not here right now, we are waiting for Brad Hickey to call in. Emilio has resigned, not formally with Liz and Dan as of yet. So as of right now, tonight, he would be absent until I get the confirmation from Dan or Liz. So we will be looking for one more member from Precinct 8.
What precinct is?
Precinct 8 to join our committee again. If you're an original
Which section?
North Wappel.
North.
So is
Oh, the
he,
names are going through my head.
I have the
he's
map here.
absent. Do I put minutes in that he's pending resignation?
You can do that, yes. I don't know why Brad's going right to my voicemail,
The alarms are going off.
but I'll try calling him.
Good or bad?
Ever hear the ring system?
Doug, do you have Brad's number?
I do not.
No. Do you want to try?
I can send him an email.
For some reason, for me, it's going right to voicemail. I'm not sure why.
He has you blocked.
Because I'm not, I know, I have him, I do not have Brad blocked as far as I know. But he's 617, oh, I don't want to actually, I don't want to be very polite of me to be shouting out someone's private phone number. I'll leave
Hey, Brad,
everyone
it's Doug.
hanging.
Ally's been trying to get in touch with you. Look, John's, yeah. No, so we'll just put you on speakerphone? All right.
Do you have battery or do you want to?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, all right, because otherwise
All
I
right,
did.
Brad, you there?
I am. Hi, everyone. Sorry about that.
No, thanks, Brad.
Brad.
Sorry for the technical difficulties. I will say that everyone who tries to reach me, I don't know, I blame the phone and technology.
It was like 2 rings and voicemail, so it wasn't even a.
Can you report that to my husband, that it's not only him that can't reach me? I'm pretty
Yeah, I hear
impossible
ya.
anyways. So we just called the morning meeting to order, and Emilio is going to be resigning from Precinct 8, so we will be requiring one more member to join. It's not official, as I haven't heard word from Dan or Liz at this point. So just to let you know, and if you know of anyone in Precinct 8 who you think could join us, let them reach out to us.
All right, I'll do that. I'll look at the roster. I'm not sure off the top of my head, but I'm sure I know someone.
Yes, and then they do have to be an RTM. And so also with the upcoming election, that will also maybe present challenges for the committee as well. Because so many, although 8 is not.
It's not.
8 is not. So many of the precincts are up for a re-election that it'll be interesting in June. But we were going to get going on voting on the minutes that Doug emailed out from last week. Were there any corrections to be made?
Good to me.
I thought they looked good. This is Brad.
2 meetings in a row, I'll take it.
Yeah.
You're hired.
For a meeting I didn't attend, they looked off.
What's that?
They looked really good for a meeting I didn't
Oh, well, that's what, yeah, I was like, man, Jeff's gonna yell at me if I don't keep detailed. minutes.
Well, you can't have that.
No brevity in that one.
I know. All right. Does anyone entertain a
Whoa.
motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Very good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone no? Abstain?
Brad is also an I.
Okay. And Jeff is going to abstain. So now that we're in person, and we are, I think, hopefully a team that will be together for a little bit, and Pat and I were talking a little bit briefly beforehand too. I think tonight maybe we can crank out some of those recommendations and make a list. We also have the appointment, or not appointment, but Glenn Maffey from the Select Board will be our touch point person for anything that has to do with Select Board. So I kind of feel like if we can crank out some of those recommendations, there's some areas that are very simple, and make an overall list, then we can reach out to Glenn with those, or finance director, there was minimum there maybe, and start with that. So, all right. Do we want to go section by section?
Well, I know, I've gone through the fiscal year. This is one that we talked about a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
We didn't vote on it, but I think it's wise to, I don't even know what section it is on the phone. It's wise to not change, I guess it's section 90, or chapter 93 relative to the fiscal year, beginning July 1st and ending June 30th, because it's a state law. So if we change it, we will be in violation of what our state overseers prefer.
All right, I'm just looking at, so what I have started to do is highlight and kind of mock some things up. So which chapter, Doug?
93?
Okay. I'm just scrolling through. Does anyone see any concerns with that?
Well, no concerns, but,
Or anything to add, I should say?
well, as a lawyer, I think it's a very good idea for the town to be in compliance with the general laws.
Yes, no.
I'm just gonna throw that out there.
No, yeah, obviously, sorry. I'm like trying to find it in the paper and thinking and talking at the same time.
Was there a question about changing the fiscal year? Like, did somebody bring that up? I'm just curious if I missed something about that before, or that's just a general observation.
It's just one of the administrative bylaws. So it was kind of like the low-hanging fruit, where I could look at
Yep.
it and spend all of 10 minutes researching it and recommend that no
Yep.
change be made. So it was just one that we could act on. We didn't do it a couple weeks ago because we were missing some members.
Yep.
So I think we're just start moving on some of these things. So
All right.
Yep.
So do you feel like we need to vote on that as taking that
I
off
don't-
the list?
I don't think we need to vote. I mean, we certainly could, but I kind of added it as a no change.
No
I mean,
change,
We're here
right.
to
Yeah.
talk about changes, and that one, we don't need to change, so.
Yes, and like I said, that one was a pretty easy one.
Yeah,
I'll look to the lawyers.
Yeah, I think since reviewing the bylaws is part of our mandate, I think it should at least be reflected in the minutes that we did consider that chapter and then recommended no change, just for the sake of completeness.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think when we do a formal report, we can just simply say we don't recommend any changes to sections that aren't specifically addressed in here, based on our review and discussion, and just kind of leave it at that. We don't have to address them piece by piece, I don't think. Seems like an unnecessary waste of time and paper to do that, but that would be my suggestion.
All right. Was there another one that we wanted to take off the list pretty quickly? One that, when I was looking over Finance Committee, which is the Chapter 88, the revisions to me seem very minimal. One thing I noted was the election of officers. We typically don't ever do that till August. So that was one minor change. And also in trying to keep things gender neutral, in that same section of election of officers, we have chairman and vice chairman. So those were two just minor changes.
So if I can ask a question, just, forgive my ignorance about the operation of the Finance Committee. That election of officers in August, is that sort of an official sort of rule, a semi-official? Is it just sort of when it happens to occur?
In general, I've been on Finance Committee for 5 years. We've never met in August. In July, sorry.
Yeah, we
This
usually
is-
wait till September.
We wait till usually that last week in August is when we start. And that first meeting, we will have an election and appoint a chair, a vice chair, secretary. Usually when we wrap up, we typically do a vote if there's anything that comes up over the summer for a cap amount.
Yep.
Forget what we do, but it's,
Yeah. I think it was much, 10 grand
Yeah.
or something like that.
So would you say that the committee is constituted? When is the next committee constituted?
So usually the terms begin in June.
In June, okay. But your first meeting isn't until usually August-ish.
Right.
So then, do you think it would be worthwhile to change that? Right now, it says the Finance Committee shall annually in the month of July, and just say the Finance Committee shall at its first annual meeting,
That's,
rather than
Yeah.
necessarily specifying a particular month?
That's fine, because it is August, September. It kind of depends when the warrant, the articles are starting to get ready that we start reviewing. So if the warrant wraps up in August, we start reviewing all the articles sometimes that last week in August.
Do we know, if has anyone looked into whether the Commonwealth has requirements related to this in terms of election within X amount of the beginning of the fiscal year or anything like that?
Excellent question.
good question. Dave's looking into it.
And that may be.
I can look into it if somebody wants me to. That just struck me because, the town election's in June, and then the moderator appoints whoever he or she appoints, and then obviously, as Ally pointed out, the summertime is busy with vacations and things. So if we're not doing that, and we should be, then that's one thing. If we can just change it to not say July and it's no big deal, we should just make it compliant with what the committee has been doing for the last number of years.
And rather than say, as you're looking at that, Dave, rather than say the first meeting of the year, can we just say the first meeting following the town election? Because it's like the first fiscal year, but it's not the calendar year.
The first meeting following the spring town meeting. Yeah.
Spring town election.
I think it should be.
So it's
I
after,
think
it's
it
after
should
the
be
election.
Based on appointment of the committee.
Right. I agree with
First meeting
that.
after the appointment of the committee.
And generally, there's not a
Or
full,
reappointment of the committee.
right, because in general, it's not a full turnover of the committee.
Right.
If there's 14 people, it's 3-year terms, so they kind of stagger out. Some are reappointed. 15 people. Have we actually had 15?
15 3 years.
15, and then 3, so then they stagger out.
Yeah.
And sometimes it may be to fill a 1-year void if someone left early. It can just be dependent of what's going on.
Or new.
Yeah, I mean, technically, after every election, it is a new committee, right? Is people have longer terms, but the constitution of the full group changes every year, right?
Yes.
Not
a
necessarily
majority.
changes. It could be the same people, just with new terms.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
If they've taken on a reappointment.
Yeah.
So I guess what's the official act that constitutes the committee each year? Is it you get a letter from Dan, or?
Well, you're appointed to a 3-year term.
Okay, yeah.
So I think you're up this year, right?
Maybe.
Well, I was up last year.
I'm up.
And so, so Jeff's up. So Jeff will either have to be reappointed, or he will be.
If Dan
And
doesn't
so
like me.
if somebody else comes in.
Or a new
there's
moderator is
member.
elected and,
Yeah, if a new moderator is elected.
and they don't offer reappointment and are seeking to change things,
Okay.
change some of the committee members.
Is anybody else running for moderator? I didn't see any names.
No, I don't think so.
So we could.
Not yet.
I haven't found
That anyway,
anything.
so.
Yeah.
All right, so that's just a minor change then that we can follow up on, but stating that it's July, I've never met in July
Yeah.
as a finance committee
No.
member. And then just the wording of chairman and vice chairman to just for something more gender neutral. Did anyone else see any other changes?
I had pointed something out, like, back when we first met, I think, there was something about, capital and operating being discussed during Springtime meeting. But, over recent years, we've started doing capital budget in the fall. I just can't for the
Find
life
it.
of me find what section that was in.
I think that was in the charter.
Oh, was it? All right, wasn't in the bylaw. Yeah, it's not in the bylaws.
It's in the charter?
Be in the charter.
It is in the charter, yes. Yeah, section 2-10.
Yeah.
All right, so for Finance Committee though, besides following up on just the legality of checking with the Commonwealth if there's something for that, and those two spots of changing to a gender neutral term. I did not see anything else in that section. Did anyone else want to add?
I don't have anything to add, but what I kind of would prefer to do on some of these things where, I read this originally, I haven't read it since, and so I'd almost want to look through it one more
Yeah.
time, and then maybe we discuss it, make a recommendation at the next meeting. Or
Yep.
just, I don't know that I'd have anything, I just want to give it another once over.
Yeah, so maybe we can sort of meet in smaller groups to, propose language and, if you like, I can take a look at the laws and see what I find. Or, I mean, this might be a question for town council. Yeah.
All right, next section. Did anyone
I
else have
wanted to
it?
do chapter 17,
You want to do chapter 17?
yeah, permanent building committee.
Yes, I was looking through that earlier today too. All right, Jeff, what do we have for Permanent Building Committee?
There's
Chapter
no-
17.
That, as a member for the last, 5 years, whatever, there's no guidance on when the permanent building committee has oversight over a project. There's nothing that states, financial value of the project. And just talking to the current existing committee members, if there's a $500,000 window replacement project at Fisher School, do we want to be involved? No, Donnie Anderson's completely capable of managing that. But when you have a $9 million
Middle school.
or no, $9 million
Mid-Delta.
field project going on up the Route 1A, and there's no oversight by the permanent building committee, that's, something I think we need to come to terms on when. Right now, it's just kind of I don't want to say arbitrary, it's not the right term, but I'll use it anyway for now, because I don't have a better one. An arbitrary decision by either town administration or select board as to when permanent building committee has oversight.
Because it says in the responsibilities, it just refers to buildings.
Yep.
So in that case, was the snack shack built by private funds, and so it kind of got away from it? It doesn't talk about fields in terms of that again, right? So did that one?
So, yeah, I mean, that wasn't a vertical building, right? It was it was a capital project, right? Fields.
Yep.
I can't remember what the value was. What was it, 11 million, 9 million? We started at 13, went to 8.5, I don't know, whatever it was.
I don't remember
But-
the final vote of what was
I think it was,
borrowed.
I think it was 7.
Okay.
7.5. With bonding, it was up to like 9.
Yeah. But I mean, is there the ability to put a dollar value on the capital expenditure as to when the permanent building committee does have oversight? And then it's up to the permanent building committee if it necessitates, bi-weekly, monthly meetings, or maybe just, a general update from the, from Don Anderson on a monthly basis or something like that.
So you'd like to add
I'd like to
in-
add language that specifically dictates when permanent building committee is involved versus when they're not. For example, we're proposing a $750,000 snack shack up at the Fields, right? Does permanent building committee get involved in that?
They have not been, I would
Is it
take it.
a municipal building?
It's a municipal building,
Yeah, I mean.
a new municipal building.
And the committee has been active. You've been a
I-
member for 5 years. We've built a lot of buildings in town
Yeah.
in this time frame, so it's been an active committee.
I don't need my name on a snack shack. That's not the point, you know what I mean? But
Wait, that's an option?
This is Brad. I'm just curious because this is kind of news to me in terms of no involvement. Was the permanent building committee involved with like the sheds at the DPW and stuff, or no?
that was kind of a little gray.
Okay.
We didn't have direct oversight of it, but we also had 3 other projects going on at the same time. We did get updates, we did review change requests, but it wasn't, necessarily managed by the permanent building committee, so.
So Jeff, how often do you guys meet?
Right now, we don't have anything active other than the school building. So we have 3 members that are part of the school building committee, as per the
Okay.
charter of the school building committee.
And those,
Yeah.
currently, that's usually twice a month, the middle school permanent building.
Right, right.
Yeah, but we were
And then-
also on the subcommittee for
Right,
the
and then-
CM, which was like 5 days a week.
Yes, then I was just gonna say, they just finished interviewing, so they were very active, as a subcommittee member too.
I have not had a chance to look back at the notes from the last bylaw committee, and I wonder if they changed any of that language then to what it is now.
There wouldn't be a financial article that goes through town without finance committee seeing it, right?
Right.
I kind of feel the same way about permanent building.
Okay, actually, I might be able to answer that question.
I mean, I'm just looking through the charter here as well. Like, there's no, and the thing, there's no definition of what a municipal building is. And so, a bathroom building and snack shacks probably counts as a municipal building. I don't know, would we call that the one at the high school, which is essentially what they're building down in South Walpole, but a little bit bigger? I guess that's a municipal building.
There's discussion about a big investment being made at Old Town Hall, to do something with that. Would permanent building
Yeah,
committee be
exactly.
involved?
Yeah.
My opinion, yes, they should be. We also don't have a full committee right now appointed.
How many members is it supposed to be?
I think it's supposed to be 7?
7, yeah.
And what are you guys at right now?
3. Just the 3 that are serving as,
It says a lawyer,
SBC.
an engineer or architect,
yeah.
experienced and financial manager, 3 members at large, and the 7th member of the committee shall be serving currently on a particular construction project's petitioning board.
Was, with all the other buildings, was have
We
people
were
dropped
fully-
out?
We,
Okay.
we had full 7
Full,
member
but those,
appointment.
as people dropped out, new people haven't joined in.
Yeah.
And it's been, when was the last building we finished? Was it DPW?
COA.
Mm.
COA, DPW finished about the same time, fire finished.
Finished.
Mhm.
I'm just surprised with the middle school that more people haven't wanted to get appointed on.
But the
That's a
charter for the
personal
school
note.
building committee only identifies 3 people from the permanent building committee as needing to be on the school building
But
committee.
as a part of
It's
that,
different, right?
right, but as a part of being on the permanent middle school building committee, if there was a full permanent building committee, typically those 3 members would go back to the full committee and give updates, correct?
So I've actually seen some towns that have done MSBA projects. They have the school building committee, having oversight of the school building. But they also still have the permanent building committee actually meeting and,
Well, I mean, and there's a lot to review. I mean, I'm, as a finance committee member on it, and I've joined, maybe back in December, I think. There's a lot to
It's
review.
almost the type of thing like with the CM at risk, right? You could have had the permanent building committee do the selection and report back to the school building committee, something like that, where you would have had 7 of us.
Going through the
Architect, engineer, all the qualifications that you need. So, food for thought.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. I'm looking at the charter here, and I don't know enough about it, but it says that the select board has the power to appoint persons to the building committee. I don't read that as a requirement to have a permanent building committee, so that may explain why it's just kind of lacked for some period of time.
It does
We
say
had that
so.
with some other committees as well over the course of years. They disappear and then they come back in, but I don't know if a full permanent building committee is required, but I think if we want to suggest some language about the responsibility and how it works, maybe we include the fact that it should be permanent. It should be required on a yearly basis or whatever
This kind of
turnover
ties
requires.
into me also with questions about chapter 22, which is the Building Maintenance Advisory Committee, which I don't know the last time that was
I
active.
don't think it exists anymore.
Yeah.
When was the last active status of it?
I think that actually may have shifted to the responsibility of the permanent building committee at one point.
So,
Right, but that was sort of a question that I had, right? Because the Permanent Building Committee is responsible for construction, not maintenance. I mean, that seems like a separate function, and I think it is important for the town to have an active role in maintaining its municipal buildings and fields, and to have someone looking at this.
You know,
right,
on a
I've
regular
never
basis.
seen an annual report, and I think just this year, $1 million was allocated towards the library for some building maintenance. So to me,
Yeah, but I mean, that seems kind of ad hoc, doesn't it, right? Like maybe the library trustees determined that they needed to perform maintenance and then
no,
asked,
I
or
don't, I
no?
think there's some leaking roof problems
Yeah,
or
it's
such.
like-
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, as
Just
far as I
coming
know,
back
there's,
to- if you're reading through the bylaws and you're saying Building Maintenance Advisory Committee, a building that what year was the library finished is now needing significant funds
Yep.
to do some repairs, to me, that would be part of a Building Maintenance Advisory Committee that is supposed to be a
Yep.
part of overseeing or giving those updates. Because I was kind
Yeah,
of
and that-
surprised to see.
That's a moderator obligation
Yeah, I was gonna say
in the
that.
bylaws.
Right, but I
So,
don't think it's been an active committee.
yeah.
I don't know when it was last active, and that's something we can ask too, is what is the last active roster of
I
that?
don't wanna,
I
we
just
do
pull
have
up
a very
moderator
competent building department, though.
Yes.
It doesn't,
Yes.
doesn't need oversight all the
No.
time. I mean, that's not the point, you know?
No, Don Anderson does a phenomenal job, but if it's part of the bylaw, should it go more under the permanent building committee?
Yeah.
Is it something that's still worth being in the bylaws? It's, because part of our purpose was, is it current practice? Is it active,
Yeah, I mean, the thing I've struggled with is the MSBA and the makeup of the committee has a specific purpose, to make sure the educational goals are fulfilled. The building meets those educational goals and all that. But then at the same time, should we still have a functioning permanent building committee overseeing construction? And as we start, right now, we're moving into pre-construction phase. That's when, that's when you should have a permanent building committee, or at least a representation, so,
Right, and I would say individuals of that committee that
yeah.
have asked a lot of great questions of materials being used, longevity of those materials, things like that, which you need.
I mean, I think I think the advisory committee is a valuable, part of the discussion all through the school thing, not to get into all of that, but was the kind of some deferred maintenance and just the overall not keeping up with buildings, both at the school buildings and elsewhere. And if there's been no building maintenance advisory committee for years, there's nobody really forcing everybody to address these issues, or at least bringing them up on an annual basis. I think it's important to restore that, especially with all the money being spent on the new school. People are going to want to make sure that it's handled.
So who do we go to about this? Because the moderator appoints this board, and the select board appoints
Permanent building.
the permanent building.
Yeah.
But the town
To
administrator
me, I
is
think we
involved.
bounce this one off Glenn. That's, talk to him, maybe town administration, see if they've got some input. I can get perspective from the current permanent building committee, or remaining. I just think ahead of all the projects that are potentials, right? Snack Shack, Old Town Hall. We know we have to do something at the high school at some point. That's not gonna be MSBA.
Johnson.
So given it's not MSBA, yeah, we're gonna, repurpose Johnson. What are we doing? So,
Yeah, so there's still a lot of building structures that are going to be needing to be addressed.
And maintained.
I,
Well, and the library is a good example, Ally. You brought up the library. I mean, the library's not that old, and we're spending $1 million for something. How did that happen?
And I
How
think,
did that get through everyone's knowledge until it happened?
right, and I think too, DPW buildings, I think there's some funds allocated towards that for some building maintenance as well.
yeah, but that's all capital stuff we've approved.
Right, it's capital
gone
stuff.
through, yeah.
Right, it's been gone through, but again, without having these
Who's checking?
committees that in place, the building maintenance advisory or things like that? Or is permanent building part of permanent building committee also as an advisory? Is it two
We
separate?
don't want
or-
to, we don't want to oversee a roof replacement for $1 million. It's not the point. Yeah.
But who is that? Who is the group that's responsible for?
I don't know that
Doing that
we need,
report.
we need a committee to oversee that. I think we have a building department that's completely competent to do that.
So
It's when
then,
you get into the big multi-million dollar, you gotta
Yeah.
manage vendors and,
so then is your opinion of chapter 22 as something that should not be questioned to be like reinstated and reappointed? It's supposed to be another 6-member committee with 3-year terms.
Is
I
it
think-
redundant?
Well,
Because
I
we
don't
have
know
a
what their,
maintenance
what
team.
is their charge? Is
I-
it to oversee the maintenance or to help identify what the maintenance needs are?
Yeah,
I've never
just-
understood that.
It
so.
says at least once a year, make an inspection of all public
Buildings.
buildings and grounds and make a written report to the select board with copies to FinCom and town clerk specifying any and all repairs and alterations deemed necessary.
so I think to what Nancy, I think what you're saying, the point of the advisory committee is to identify the issues that need to be addressed. right?
it, yeah.
Which is, I think, very different than the permanent building
Yeah,
committee.
permanent buildings, new construction,
Right, but it,
or
this is,
major renovation and
right.
addition.
And they're two completely different, but the advisory committee isn't active.
Yeah.
So should it remain active? Like, should it be reactivated and reappointed? And we should question, why is this not being current? What language can we change to make it current? Or should it be recommended to be removed as a committee?
It almost feels like a personnel board, to me, and town administration and building maintenance, they're doing that now. I
The
think they do
department
a fine
heads-
job. Department heads are managing it.
Are all of the public buildings being inspected annually?
I would say by department heads, the department heads are gonna make their recommendations of capital budget projects that
Yeah.
are needed. I mean, there's certainly, capital budget plans of
They have
the
their
schools,
5-year.
this roof is gonna get done, now next year that roof is gonna get done, or these section of windows need to be done at Fisher, and then this will be kind of that next, those are all part of 5-year capital plan projects that different departments have.
Yeah.
Sewer and water, you
So
have.
who identifies
you
which
know.
one takes priority? Is that one of these
The town
committees?
administrator's part of the committee, so
Part of the planning.
assume that he's always making recommendations, and maybe that's,
But I think the department heads in these buildings are, and the maintenance crew in these
Yeah.
buildings are going and
Yeah.
putting forth those capital plans when there's an issue with the building.
Yeah, then I think in that case, the primary function of the advisory committee would just be to get some perspective, some town-wide perspective on all of the issues that have come up. And, I don't have a strong opinion as to whether or not that particular function is valuable, given that the department heads are conducting these inspections and looking after their own. I don't have a strong opinion either way.
I would say, David,
You want this
from my-
committee to
from
be
my
reactive?
perspective, I think that.
Where are you going with it?
Here's the thing,
hold on a second, Brad.
I belong to the advisory committee for the MWRA.
Okay,
Now, you would think an advisory committee just gives advice, huh? Yeah, but it's worked itself into the finance committee of the MWRA. In other words, everything, the MWRA, every budget has to come before the advisory committee that consists of representatives from all the cities and towns. I think you heard, I have a one half of
a vote.
a percentage of a vote. And, but my vote counts if it's not financial. In other words, if we're making rules, I have the same vote as the city of Boston, okay? But this committee, which was an advisory committee, is very, very into everything. So, I don't know. That's the, what's the best, I mean, it's almost like these dominant personalities can take a committee and work it to be whatever they want. I mean, are there limits on what these advisory committees can do? I mean, should it even be spelled out, or?
I mean, when you read over this, really the role is to do a yearly inspection and write and present a report
Is that
of
strict?
repairs and alterations that are deemed necessary.
So are you a strict constructionalist or not?
But it just says 6 members.
And it says all
It's not
shall,
like permanent building, which has more specific
right.
membership, a lawyer, an engineer, an architect, financial management. It's much more specific in
personal
permanent building. In the
remuneration.
advisory, it's just 6 members.
Remuneration, shouldn't that be remuneration? It says that the committee also shall also act in an advisory capacity to any building committee. I mean, is this like a checks and balances for everything?
I think
else?
that's exactly it.
Yeah.
That was what I was going to say before. I mean, I think, I think all the department heads we have and all the, everybody does a great job. I don't have anything against what anybody has been doing, but not having this committee essentially leaves that analysis up to the department heads, and then they bring it to maybe the select board or the finance committee or the capital, depending on what's happening. But without the regular, quote unquote, citizen involvement of seeing these facilities, seeing what they're talking about, understanding what they're talking about that needs to be done now. And I know there used to be a long list of stuff with the schools and things that people had a running list, and stuff was done and other stuff wasn't done. That I think is probably the intention of this committee, is to have some oversight. It's not a day-to-day thing, but it's okay. Every year we're gonna look at these buildings and see what's going on, just to give everybody a state of the union, so to speak. I don't think that's a bad thing.
Agreed.
Brad, it's Jeff. I don't know that it's necessary, though. The one thing about this committee, it also doesn't spell out what the makeup of those 6 members are. So, I mean, I would assume that the appointed committee would have architects, engineers, people that know construction, building maintenance, all that kind of stuff, but,
Well, if they're making an inspection,
yeah.
like, I suppose I could be on the committee and go make an inspection. I have no idea what I'm inspecting.
Well, I think
I'm not
one of the
climbing that
questions,
roof.
and again, I don't know enough about how things operate now, but when I read chapter 22 and it says, not only do they make the inspection of the buildings and grounds, but they make a written report to the select board,
Right.
and then with copies and so forth. Is the stuff that's being done now in terms of reporting, is that all going to the select board? Is that all publicly available for people on an agenda or on the website? I just recall so many RTMs and other people in town, when they finally got a chance to look at Bird and Johnson, they were like, nobody had any idea the condition of those buildings. Maybe it's because they weren't paying attention, but I don't remember that, if this committee hasn't existed for a while, as an example, if there were annual reports to the select board about the problems in every single building, at least that's a resource for people to understand the state of play. And without that, people get surprised, and then they get upset that the deferred maintenance happens, and it just becomes that vicious cycle. I hear you were saying, Jeff. I don't know how much of a heavy lift this committee would really be. It would be a lot of work in a short period of time, probably, but it seems useful to me.
All right, so I'm kind of starting to write the list of questions too. So I have that listed down for town moderator, town administrator.
Yeah. Brad wants to be the chair of that committee.
Well, yeah, and I think, just one other issue that I recall from recent memory was that when the Route 1A field project was being moved through town meeting, there was a lot of discussion, and I think some of it heated, about the availability of other fields in town to satisfy the needs that were being requested. And without, bringing up those arguments again, I think that had there been an inspection of the buildings and the adjacent fields all in one place and having that report on an annual basis, there might have been a place to turn to, reports to look at that might have curtailed some of that rather lengthy back and forth.
I mean, there was a field study done. It clearly showed what the needs were. I think there were people that objected to spending the money on fields. It's, it's, you're for it or
I don't
against
mean
it,
to
you
bring
know?
that up again. I just think
No,
that
but-
having a report might have helped on an annual
Right.
an annual report.
Right, an
might have
annual
helped.
report that is more easily found upon the town website as a reference point. The fields document, we were presented, on finance committee, so I saw it, but I don't think, if I knew about it, I would not know how to have found it, to research it, looked online to see it, to view it. If there was a committee and it was on the town website, because I think right now, if you went on the town website, you're not gonna see this listed as a committee on the website.
This?
No,
It is not. I
The
looked.
advisory,
Advisory
is the
committee.
bylaws not on there, we're not on there
Oh,
either? No, the
uh,
advisory
I'm
committee's
sorry,
not
our
on there.
committee. Yeah,
Right.
I'm talking about this.
You wouldn't, wouldn't have that reference point to
We
go to.
weren't under moderator appointments, and I guess we're not under moderator appointment, we are RTM appointment. I didn't-
Oh, okay, yeah. So, all right, we'll bring that.
Oh.
We're under our, we were elected or volunteered ourselves amongst our individual precincts.
Yeah, we were voluntold.
Uh,
Well, no, I volunteered because
Yeah.
I was asked.
Well, we all volunteered, kind of.
Yeah, I don't think any precinct had an election, because I think if anyone said yes.
There was no show of hands of whether or not
It was put out to the whole precinct, though. All right, so we will put those under questions. Any next section that anyone had some items that they want to go through?
I do have a question. Who's in charge of Chapter 125, meeting of town boards? Who
Me,
picked that?
me.
If you notice at 125-1, it says open sessions of meetings of elected boards to be available for broadcast by cable television. Why doesn't it say open sessions of meetings of town boards to be available, blah, blah, blah? I'm just curious on that, and I'm loath to even recommend that it be changed because of the law of unintended consequences. There may be some boards that it's inappropriate to have.
Broadcast.
I agree with you, though. It
But the
shouldn't be
ti-
just elected, it should be appointed.
The
board.
title is Meetings of Town Boards.
So that was I'm just not sure why they,
Why it then says elected?
limited to elected boards.
That's a good point, Pat.
Just wondering.
Right. Well, I don't know about the rest of you, but I got a letter from Dan Bruce saying that I was appointed to this board, not, I wasn't elected at any sort of, townwide election. So I guess to your point, would this bylaw even apply to us? Because this isn't an elected board.
But we do have cameras.
We do.
Yeah.
And I think we should, in the interest of transparency.
Yeah.
It's the
But
open-
that's only because we've decided to. It's not mandated.
But are open.
Well, I mean, the finance committee isn't an elected board. The recreation committee isn't an elected board. Most of the boards aren't elected boards. So, in my view, it should apply to everybody.
But I mean, you think of something like the Cultural Council that is not an elected board, but they're still a board. They're appointed. They're not broadcast.
I think when the rec committee meets, I don't think
They have open sessions,
Yeah.
but they're
Don't
not
they?
broadcast.
Think about that.
All right, so I'm gonna add that.
Well, I think it's an important point to bring up, Pat. But for me, at least the way this language is written, it doesn't impose a requirement on the town to record every single meeting. It says that the meetings must be made available for recording, meaning if somebody wants to record it from cable television, then you have to let them. Not that they have to go, because I don't know that Walpole Media would be able to do every single board, every single meeting.
I think that's why it says elected.
They probably don't have that capacity, and I don't think we should steer towards that being a requirement of every meeting. But I think that's my view.
I agree with the way it's written, that elected boards must be televised. But the fact of the matter is, most of the appointed are as well. So should we designate specific appointed boards to also be televised?
Well, I have a question. Is this, this bylaw here, is there an impact from the open meeting law? Right, I mean, does the open meeting law require that specific committees of the town?
This says available, doesn't say you have to do it. It just says that any elected board should be available for cable.
Yeah.
We, on my commission, we tried for years to get cable. And they told us they couldn't do it because of where we were and so on and so forth. We wanted live cable, and they told us that's impossible. So we were available, but many times there's some hitch and we don't get, we're not broadcast or cable cast. And that's happened in this year, I think, a couple of times already, where it just was not able to be,
Yeah.
but we're available,
Yeah.
so we've met
Sometimes there's
them.
meetings at the same time, too, so they
Yeah.
can't, I guess they
And
can't
so there's
broadcast
a bunch
everything,
of,
but.
but it's the availability that I'm looking at here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and David, I think the open meeting law applies to elected and appointed boards. It's not just elected boards.
Yes, it does.
But that open meeting means they can't all get together at a restaurant and decide policy. It doesn't mean that they have to broadcast their meeting. It just means the meeting has to be announced and open. If the public wants to comment and show up, they can. Anyway, that's my view of the open meeting law. So I think it's okay to leave this language as is, but I'm also in support of changing it to just elected or appointed to make that clear.
Or should we keep it elected, but when available, also televised for appointed? Or other town boards?
If there's any input from,
Media input, yeah.
yeah.
I know.
Does she want to sleep?
Tamara's perking up.
Well, and it just be, again, so we'll add that into our questions because it may be logistics of the availability.
And who,
But there are so many important boards that are not elected but appointed that should be recorded and should be available, so.
who would I ask this of?
Well, I think we can put it to town administrator and Walpole Media,
Yeah.
and see what their thoughts are.
Yeah, do you think that,
What the ramifications would be to change that if it was appointed,
Mm-hmm.
because there are times when there's just too many meetings on a given night that they can't cover everything.
Yeah.
do you think the moderator might have some input on that as well, being the appointing official?
All right, we will put those all
No,
together.
it's funny, Board of Assessors is an elected, and I
Maybe
don't
know
think they're
something.
televised.
They're not televised.
I'm not aware that they are. But it's only a board of three as well,
There's only a board of
and a
three.
department head. Maybe they are. Maybe I just didn't see it in the Walpole Media feed. I don't know.
I feel like I haven't,
I think it's on the calendar. I don't know if it's broadcast.
On the calendar, it's posted.
Things
it's
are always,
tended,
yeah.
yeah.
all right.
Would anybody like to touch animal control officer?
So animal control, we held out on, part of it is because we haven't voted at town meeting for the new funding, because this is written how animal control was prior to, and
Well,
we've
we've
done
already been in
the
that
new cycle.
intertown agreement.
Yes. So that is one that needs a thorough workup.
In my opinion, the current budget reflects a 24/7 staffing, and that doesn't,
It doesn't say that,
that's not
no.
included in the current bylaw.
No, there's a lot in the current bylaw that is not included.
So do we need to go through the process at town meeting before, is that what you're saying, before we can redo this?
No,
Well,
well,
there's nothing to do with town meeting, but approve the budget or not.
approve the
Yeah.
budget.
That's it for town meeting.
kind of approve the budget, but I feel like some of this language was somewhat addressed last year when we approved the funding last year in the town warrant, because it changed last year. Was it last year?
We moved it from responsibility of town administrator to
Police
chief of police
department.
about,
Or it
That was
under-
2 years ago.
2 years ago, so
Yeah.
it was under select board prior to, and then it got moved to
yeah, whatever.
to
Police.
the police. Um,
But it talks about, chief of police establishes the hours, overnight is
Overnight.
covered by the police. And the funding request we looked at shows 24/7 support.
It is 24/7. There's three officers, and they are responsible 24/7. What I want to look up is the language of what was approved 2 years ago when it got changed from select board to police.
Isn't it already reflected?
Some of it is. Do you think it
I'm just looking at the top of the notations that it was amended,
amended?
for 2018, 2019.
Was it that long ago? Yeah, I guess 3 years.
So then there's quick, obvious ones of the hours, overnight hours, so that is 24/7 now. And even the language appoint an animal control officer.
Is this,
But-
I mean, we had such a heated debate during the finance committee.
Yes.
Is this gonna be the type of thing where we talk about this section, we say, hey, we should adjust these hours or adjust these hours, only to find out a year or two from now, we go and reverse it? Right now, none
Well,
of this chief of police stuff is
Because, well, this does it, right, because it also doesn't take into fact that it's an municipal
agreement.
agreement right now, and we're only in year 2 of the intermunicipal agreement. And it's been expanded to
Yeah.
3 officers now.
So the other thing too is animal control officer is also responsible for, inspecting for permitting that's issued
Board of
through the
Health.
Board of Health. But, which is defined under 587 by animal control. But the ACO and the bylaws, it says nothing about, the enforcement of,
Permitting.
or permitting by the Board of Health.
Well,
So,
because,
while
did you-
there's a responsibility of chief of police, there's also a responsibility of Board of Health.
well, it's the it's general reference, I think maybe is where it alludes to it, is the Board of Health Animal Control, Chapter 587.
Right, but in 587, I don't think it mentions anything about an animal control officer.
All right. I couldn't get my computer up on the internet.
I got 12% left, so.
Got a power pack. Pass it along, yeah.
I'm good for now. I got 12, I'm good.
It is 587. I'm looking at it now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, -2 is the animal permit, and the entire chapter doesn't reference the animal control officer. Or at least the word officer doesn't appear in the chapter.
Yeah. No.
So that would be questions going to town admin, Board of Health, Glennis, the select board, touch
And
person,
Maybe
and
Chief Keller.
Chief Kelleher. And we had said we would just pause on that as we waited for, since it's only year 2 of the intermunicipal agreement, kind of waiting to see if that was approved, how it was ironed out, which I think it has been now. And then town meeting hasn't appropriated the funds yet, but the agreement has been signed, I believe.
Okay.
So did you say that it's now 24/7 coverage and it's 3 ACOs who are on rotation?
Yes,
Okay.
Through the town of Norwood.
through the town of Norwood.
So what are the municipalities? Is it just Walpole and Norwood?
I
Walpole.
know,
Norwood.
Paul Norwood.
Okay.
But that was part of the reason of holding, is just seeing how that agreement kind of went through. We had a discussion at FinCom about it in length. I think the vote was maybe 8-7. It was,
Oh, goodness.
It's getting really expensive. so it wasn't quite
It went from like
what we were.
60,000 to 90,000 to 180,000.
And that's the shared cost?
That's the shared
That-
cost.
no,
That's our portion of, that's just our portion of the
Portion
shared.
of the shared
That's the
cost.
bill we received.
Wow.
I would expect that to be a lot of discussion at town meeting.
So,
So we'll see if they're ready to move forward then on suggesting those changes based on the updated intermunicipal. Because last year's agreement and this year's agreement were the extra increase in cost, and now it's 3 officers. All right. Next list of questions, for which area? Pat, did you have an area you wanted to go over? Not yet?
No, that was, you got the people, the persons on the finance committee. You already did that.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I'm good.
All right. Nancy, was there anyone that you wanted to go over quickly?
No, we already did all of mine.
All right, so animal control is still an area that needs a lot of adjustments, I feel, a little more so than other areas.
I do have a question, though, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Should we be reassigning the 2 that were assigned to Emilio? 202 and 210?
Disposal of surplus property in town collector.
Ally, though, one thing about the intermunicipal agreements, if we do it for the dogs, there might be other things we can do those types of agreements for. That's what I'm thinking.
We do have another intermunicipal agreement,
What is it?
the Green
Veterans Service.
Veteran Services. We have Veteran Services with Medfield,
and then the green,
and we have the green one with Sharon, the town of Sharon, I think.
Ambulances, do we have, no, that's just mutual aid, right?
That's just mutual aid.
we have an energy consultant.
It's the energy consultant, I think, is Sharon.
Okay.
And that goes along with the green initiatives and some grant money and things that the
But this
town
is
worked
well worked out, right, on those particular type of agreements. So there's probably a way to do other agreements.
Yeah, I think we've gotten the way. And other,
I know we've talked about it at Finance Committee, looked at other things that we support, you know.
I won't ask because it doesn't have to do with the bylaw, Pat, but
It's gonna be all your fault, Ally.
I can hear your brain.
He wants to get
blaming
you
you.
for the water.
My whole water comments. All right.
No, the only point that I would bring up is that I don't recall seeing anything in the bylaws that relates specifically to the process that the various committees should go through when entering into these intermunicipal agreements. And I don't know whether or not that's an issue that we should address, or if it's okay to just pass on that.
The town and select board.
Because it seems like right now it's a very ad hoc process.
We have agreements that never went through the town, the Soil and Water Commission, with Sharon, Norfolk, Medfield, Dover, and what they are is sort of just written down. And when we started these, some of them a long, long time, a lot of the properties have been with us for 70 years. We really haven't had any trouble because you can turn the water off. It's a payment thing. And one of the problems are, if you're in a different town, who reads the meter, who collects the money, but that works out, we found out, because if they don't pay the bill, we turn the water off. But it's usually not homes, it's usually businesses. So it worked out, but it probably should have gone through, a process, like you say. That should be regularized. Maybe that's just,
David, you were looking more through the select board. Was that one that you had on your list? Were you part of the select board list?
Well, yes.
Thinking of contracts and purchasing, select board. some of the-
I think purchasing.
You have purchasing. okay.
Purchasing, right. Right. But yeah, that's just the who's responsible for it, and I don't know if there's a particular process that's in place to protect the town, or even whether any sort of formal process is necessary. I mean, Pat, if you've said that, we haven't had any problems with it, then maybe there's no need to poke the hornet's nest.
And the state has actually gotten into our business. In Dover, they've basically mandated that the town supply the town of Dover certain areas that's geographically specific, that we must supply them with water at the same price that we charge our own customers. So the state actually imposed that on us. If you cast your mind back to the Texaco oil spill on Route 109, that's when that happened. So we must supply certain areas of Dover.
But even though some of the fees that were discussed are out-of-town fees, rates,
Well, we can't
Once you get
supply,
into-
we can charge the other people,
but not where the.
not Dover. Dover is special.
Wow.
Okay,
But you all knew that, right?
all right.
Yeah, I mean, just to sort of close the loop on that, yeah, my observation was less directed at the particular terms of each agreement as opposed to the process that is followed to get those agreements in place, and then who's involved and who should be involved.
In Dover,
and that, yeah,
The state set that.
yeah, yeah, and whether that's even worth looking
They
at.
it passed through the general court, and that was the end of that.
That's it, the legislature did it. There you go.
But yeah, if we haven't had any issues with those agreements, at least in terms of liability to the town.
We have
or-
had some interesting, I don't know if there's a place to talk about that, but I guess if you want to know, I'll tell you. It's nothing secret. The Dover's Water Company, they have a private system. They've sold their system to somebody else. That new company is interested in the town of Walpole selling water to them. Our policy is, if we're going to give you something, we need something. How does it benefit the town? And this company couldn't come up with any way it would benefit Walpole, but we told them to go find one, and we'll talk to them again if he can. So, is that what you mean? Something like that? That's the only thing that's happened over there.
Yeah, and
They're
right now.
looking for water.
Yeah, and there isn't anything in the Walpole bylaws saying that those are the sorts of positions that we should be taking when we are negotiating these intermunicipal agreements.
We make
yeah.
a lot of money from selling water to, for instance, there's a dealership on Route 1
Herb Chambers.
that was put in there, the
Lexus.
Lexus dealership.
It's on the Sharon line.
The town, the commission actually made this money, $1.2 million for them to connect. That went into our treasury. Over on Route 1, there was
There wasn't a connection there before?
what?
There wasn't a connection there before? Because where Herb Chambers is, that used to be the old Sansone
Yeah, that's
Pits,
it.
right?
That goes, and right next to Herb Chambers is a vacant area that somebody in Sharon were going to put a 40B there, and they wanted our water and sewer, but again, what advantage is it to Walpole to have that there in that particular spot? So and there's other places we've made money. The latest one is up in Sharon, the, right behind Applebee's. You'll see something going on there.
That's going
Yeah,
on.
they just cleared that.
I know.
Hey, not to go
Yep.
too far afield, but
Yeah.
Pat, I'm just curious, when we sell the water to those places, do we put them on the same water restrictions we do Walpole people when we tell people not to water the grass and all that stuff?
I didn't hear.
He's saying, are they also on water bans?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, so
Oh, yeah.
I've added that in my notes, intermunicipal agreement, so I will check in with town administrator and add that to the notes for Glenn to see
Okay.
if perspectives of where we should go. All right, what else do we want to attack tonight? Anyone else have a
Are we
section
just
ready?
sticking with section 1, or?
We're just sticking with general, the administrative bylaws, but we have not talked about bonds, compensation contracts, town council, records, reports.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have questions for Glenn when we have our meeting, but because there are going to be so many different people who are involved in that meeting, I would like, for us to coordinate and figure out, when we can get Glenn, bend his
Okay.
ear a little bit.
All right, so you would like to coordinate a meeting, and who did you want me to reach out to see for attendance for Glenn to attend? Anyone else?
Well, I mean,
For all those, for which areas, just so I can make note when I kind of reach out to Glenn.
oh, well, I mean, it was all of those chapters
All those
that,
chapters.
that had impact with the select board. So 5, 13, 17, 45, I mean, there's
Yeah.
most of
So
them.
many of them.
What about the town moderator? Did we want to see if he'd attend as well? Because we did have some questions there for him.
Well, I think my initial thing, what I would email out, so I did make note of some things that
Yeah.
we want to do advisory committee and get a reference point first. There wasn't major language changes. Do you want to draft a list of questions for Glenn?
Yeah, I can do that for the sections that I have.
Okay.
So that's 45 town council, 177 records and reports, and 195 select board.
Okay, I think if we have a list of questions to reference to, because, he's has been the person that we're gonna reach out to for select board to kind of go through, and I'm not sure if he's read through all the bylaws and things like that yet. But if we have a list of questions, say, Glenn, specifically look at these areas, we'd like to meet and give him a heads up before he comes in to meet.
That's a good idea.
Give you something to work
Getting
off of.
Prepared, yeah.
But were there any other action
Is our
areas?
charge just administrative bylaws or something?
So that's part of the discussion. So,
Because there's something, chapter 542, off-road vehicles. We're supposed to register them with the town, when there's a state requirement to register them with the state.
State.
So I have the four-wheeler, I don't ride it in Massachusetts, because no place to ride it.
here's
But I
the
have it
next one.
registered with the state, but there's a specific
Specific-
Walpole requirement to register them with the police department.
So, this is, we
I
had to
have
kind
no
of,
problem with the use and all that kind of stuff, but that's just another.
I know, it's
tax on top
kind of a
of it.
hard area. So, the original committee, or not the original committee, the last committee stated that they really focused on the general first section.
Okay.
Many areas, I think, when I looked over the minutes, were kind of moved out or moved into other areas of the bylaws. So
Yes.
then, are we only looking at this, or do we open up the purview to a wider range? So right now, we were saying, let's focus on this area, get these done, have the recommendations, have it vetted through town administrator, the various department heads, select board, and town council for recommendation for next fall town
I'm
meeting.
cool with it.
So what- Yeah, and then we'll kind of go from there and see. Certainly some, because we let all the department heads know that we were reinstated and looking through those, different department heads have reached out and sent us things, asked questions, Council of Aging. Who else has sent us? Was it just Council of Aging that sent us?
That's the only thing I saw.
I've gotten a few questions, Nancy, I've talked to Carrie, I've talked to Josette, who's on the board, has kind of asked, what do you think about this, since you guys are the bylaw review committee? So,
So
Yeah.
did you ever make a motion to
No, I think
kind of
we,
state that we will focus this committee on administrative bylaws?
I mean, that was a recommendation. We got the
That was-
letter
that,
from Jim saying
that was the recommendation. Yeah, my personal inclination is to not follow that recommendation and to focus or at least spend some time also on the regulatory bylaws. And that is based on my reading of the scope of this committee. And I think what I will say is that if we are going to do that one way or the other, we should probably make a decision pretty soon as to whether or not we're going to look at the regulatory bylaws, because if we are, there are very many of them. And, we have a certain amount of time in which we are supposed to finish our business.
But we can also ask for a town meeting for an extension
We
as
may.
well.
And the last committee did that.
Yes, I think they spent 2 years.
I agree with David. I think a clean solution to this would be to make that report based on the recommendation and say we believe it's our charge to review all of the bylaws and request an extension accordingly. This is in the town meeting section. It's not in the town charter necessarily, but we're a town meeting committee that is trying to follow the rules of the town meeting document, which says that we review the town bylaws. So I like Jim. I know Jim well. It's not up to Jim whether we get to do this or not without us at least making our case that we should be doing more. That's my view.
And I have to third that. I just know that we'll never, we're gonna have to ask for that extension. We'll never get through all these if,
Of
Well,
course.
we can make recommendations in batches, we could do them all, but let's target administrative for the fall.
And I think I do agree. There's bylaws in all the areas. The Council of Aging, they just did a kind of go through, again, some of it is just gender neutral language. Certainly in the bylaws, there's things that are outdated. Like Jeff, you said, registration of that. There's different areas that certainly need updates. And then there's some areas that I feel like is somewhat above our purview without bringing in more people, like attacking zoning bylaws is really not something that I think should be in our scope.
yeah, I wouldn't wanna touch that.
Except for looking for language of gender neutral, but that is not within,
I wouldn't wanna touch alarm systems. I wouldn't necessarily, maybe look at alcoholic beverages, but I mean, that's really the police,
right, there's quite a bit under police with,
Fees, I think, would be a good thing to kind of look at, just to see if those are.
sometimes if they're current with others.
Fertilizers, I wouldn't know anything about.
Well, and I think a lot of these are under the purview of the police, and mostly the police. Some fire department, some, Board of Health. But I think one of the things that we discussed very early that we would do is review the bylaws to make sure that the relevant agencies and departments in town see those bylaws as reflecting their actual practices. So even if we don't have any ideas as to how the bylaws should be changed, it could be that the department heads have some ideas and say, hey, we're working with this outdated nuisance bylaw. I'm just picking one at random. So it might be worth just talking to them
I think
about.
it is a little bit of the committee pushing the department heads to read through.
It's really important that people understand. I just found out about a year ago that you can put your trash barrels out the night before. But there was a rule that you had to put them out before, you
7
couldn't put
a.m.
them out till after 7 o'clock.
Really?
Anybody else remember that?
No.
I remember reading something about it.
Yeah.
now-
And so one day I noticed that the trash truck came down at 6:30.
There was one early day in our street as well.
Called up the Board of Health. I said, oh no, you have to have them out,
Yeah, but-
the night before. Okay, but how do we tell the public these kinds of things?
Yeah, well,
I just a little thing, that
I
I
thought
didn't
it
want to
said
put
just
out the
by
night before,
7
that's
a.m.
illegal. It was.
it was.
You're right, there used
And
to
I
be
understand
something.
why they don't want trash cans out, but they don't, now they do.
We missed it one morning too.
I don't know,
They go
just-
down and then come back the other side 2 hours later. I just bring it to my neighbors.
Well, now we have,
them. All right, do we have anything else that we want to discuss for tonight? I have a list of questions. Brad, you're gonna kind of pull together the questions for Glenn for the areas that you were seeking select board kind of feedback from, so that when we invite him to the meeting, he can maybe review that beforehand.
Yeah, and I encourage, the other members of this committee to put their questions together for Glenn also, so that, maybe Ally, do you want to be sort of the central point for collecting all of those questions?
Yeah, absolutely. I highlighted some tonight that we already discussed, so. All right. It was fun meeting in person. I'm glad we got to meet in person. You can only be so productive sometimes on Zoom, I think.
Oh, we didn't address my question about if we should be taking over those other two that Emilio was covering, 202 and 210.
Speaking to Brad.
202 and 210.
That happens when you're not here,
So Brad,
Brad.
that is surplus disposal and town
Brad's,
collector.
Brad's like, I have a bad connection.
Sorry, what chapter is those?
Chapter 202 and 210.
All right, I will memorize them and issue a report next meeting.
Okay.
Very good.
Excellent.
All right, do we have anything else that we want to address tonight? Or just,
I'm good.
When our next meeting will be?
yes. All right, next meeting, thank you.
From my standpoint, Thursdays are generally good. If that helps others. Or when, whatever works, but Thursdays are generally free night for me.
What's the frequency you're looking for?
Yeah.
We've been doing once a month about.
Sounds good.
If we continue to do them once a month, I mean, we've got to get these recommendations by July, so we've got, this would be our April, we got May, June, July, so we've got 3 months. We're never gonna, unless we're having mammoth 2-hour meetings, 3-hour meetings, we're never gonna get through all the administrative bylaws. and
So,
talk
do we want to go for May 5th, unless anyone has major
Cinco de
Cinco de Mayo plans?
May 5?
to them. We can have that one not televised. It won't have-
Yes.
Yeah, are there margaritas involved?
That's Monday, right?
That's a Thursday.
It's a
The
Thursday.
Thursday. It also happens to be my wife's birthday.
All right. So do we
Uh-oh.
want to go for the 12th then? Would you prefer that?
My daughter has MCAS that day.
No, we've been through the MCAS. We just like it when we don't get any homework when we have MCAS.
I don't know
I
that
tend to agree with Doug, by the way. I think that, maybe starting in, I don't know if we could do the 12th of May and then do June 2nd and then do another one in June as well, just to try to get a couple more meetings in. We're going to lose school vacation week to some people in a couple weeks anyway, so that probably won't be a super productive week. So the May 12th will kind of help make up for that, but I'm fine with the 12th, but I agree that if we're going to try to get things done, we probably need to do more than 2 more meetings.
How about Thursday, April 28th?
Sorry, are we to do this before
That's
the
3
end of the
weeks.
fiscal year or just by the end of July?
We got to get it on the warrant, and so the warrant will come out in August.
August.
So we got to get it done before August, so I think that's why.
So it's all right. So it's not by July; it's by the end of July.
Right. I am available for 28 if we want to try to see. I can reach out to Glenn.
I can also do the 28th.
I'm not available.
Of April.
Of April.
Yeah.
Yeah.
3 weeks.
I'll be on a plane all day.
Yeah, I'm also available. Oh, did you say you were out, Nancy?
No.
Okay.
Nancy, do you feel strongly if you're not here, if we have Glenn here for that one? I don't want to meet anything that, right, oh, I know.
No, I will not impede progress.
I would point out that 3 weeks, is a quick turnaround if we're trying to get our questions to Glenn in advance and give him enough time to look things over. I'm happy to do that as well. Get my questions to you, Ally. But
maybe, can I throw it out there, maybe we try to, if we can meet on the 28th, or if we have enough people to meet on the 28th, to just confirm everything we want to talk to Glenn about and see if Glenn's available for that 12th. That way we get some clarity and we're not just spitting things at him in a hurried manner. 2 days before the meeting, if we meet on the 28th, we kind of clarify everything we want from Glenn and we can send it off to him shortly afterwards. He'll have some time to look at it before the 12th. Does that make sense?
I think it makes sense, but is that,
So see if Glenn is available on 5/12 to join
5/12.
us. But meet on 4/28.
I mean,
yeah,
I
depends.
yeah, I think it wouldn't hurt to also ask if he's available on the 28th.
Okay. All right. Okay, I have that in my notes.
What are we doing in the summertime? I'm not here.
Who's got a Cape House?
I've got nothing to say.
Walpole Media is coming to your Cape House, Pat.
But I'll be,
Put a system
maybe
in.
we'll do Zoom.
Why don't we do hybrid for the summer?
Yeah,
I was gonna say we can do, if that's still allowed, we could do hybrid.
I can do it from the beach.
Well, you may have us all at your beach. All right, so we'll do, Glenn, we'll do 4/28 and 5/28 with the
5/12.
5/12.
What are we saying? I'm sorry, Dave.
4/28 and 5/12 is the next two upcoming meetings.
4/28. 4/28 and 5/12.
Is that 7 PM both times?
Yes.
And the plan is for those to be where you all are now, in person?
I would say so unless anyone objects.
I have no problem with this. It's nice and spread out. Got my power cords. So. I know it's easier to do the hybrid.
If we need a hybrid, if we book the appropriate room in advance, we could offer a hybrid option as well.
I mean, as far as the 12th, it's gonna, I'll do like an hour till 8 to
It's fine.
the baseball game. I don't miss them.
I don't blame you. No. I think anything productive too, like, once you hit an hour and a half, it's good. Usually it's kind of,
Well, we're sitting at an hour and 27 minutes.
right.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
Watching.
I know, very carefully.
All right, now that
All
we
right,
got that.
so now that we have that out, we have the minutes, we already voted on that.
Yep.
Do we have a
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to
Second.
adjourn from Jeff, second by Nancy. Everyone who says
Aye,
aye.
aye, aye.
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 All right.
Aye.
Thank you, Brad, for
Aye,
calling
bye.
in and meeting with us too.
Thank you all. Looking forward to getting together in person at some point soon.
All right,
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah,
See ya.
stay healthy.
all right.